Hi there, welcome to another online sociology lesson. We are looking today at statistics. Now, statistics you will see in all walks of life, and a lot of the time you'll see them used in marketing and advertising and by the government, by charities to prove a point, to sort of reveal some kind of truth about society or the world that we're in. And statistics are really helpful for sociologists when kind of looking at society in a quantitative way. We get to observe kind of trends and patterns and certain facts that we can see with statistics, and they give us a great way of looking to begin with at a topic. So if we were to look at some kind of novel statistics that we've got going around, this one is one of my favorites. More than 10 people a year are killed by a vending machine. Now, I'm not quite sure how that happens. I'm not quite sure what they've been doing in order to be killed by that vending machine. And that's one of the things with statistics is they tell you like a fact, a figure, but they don't tell you much more detail. They don't tell you the qualitative reasons why. And that is something that I would love to find out as to what people are doing in order to be killed by a vending machine. One for your nan. If your nan is the sort of person that says every Christmas that the size of certain chocolate bars is getting smaller, then actually she's right, because 16.7% is the percentage reduction in the number of Jaffa cakes in the McVitie's Christmas tube. So they've removed 16.7% of the volume of the Jaffa cakes in total from that tube. It's the same size tube, but they've got less Jaffa cakes in. So your nan is right. More than 10% of the world's salt is used to de-ice American roads. On average, again, another one I'd love to find out as to how this is possible. 100 people choke to death on ballpoint pens each year. One for Donald Trump this. More Mexicans are leaving the US than are coming to the US. And a slightly more serious one here, the world's 8 richest men have as much money as the poorest half, which is 3.6 billion people. So there are 8 men who are as wealthy as 3.6 billion people. So statistics can be used, as you can see, in a whole range of different ways. They can be used to prove some really quite serious points like immigration and wealth inequality, or some slightly more interesting ones and funnier ones like vending machine deaths and Jaffa cake reduction. The point about them is that they are always using a figure, okay? So there's quantitative data every single time. What they don't tell you is the reasons behind the statistic, and that's a lot of the time what sociologists will try and do is they will take the statistic, the overview figure, and then they will look at the reasons behind it. So they'll employ a combination, a mixed method research of quantitative data and qualitative data as well, okay? But this is just looking specifically at what statistics are, why they're useful, some of the advantages, some of the disadvantages, and sort of some of the ways that they're used by sociologists in the UK. So to start with, this is a statement that kind of defines them as an entity. I'm going to let you read that to start with. So if you are using statistics in your research, then you are conducting a form of secondary research, okay? Because that's because you're using data that has been collected by somebody else, okay? So if I am the government and I produce a set of statistics about the amount of marriages in the UK last year, and then you are a sociologist and you take that statistic and you say, using this statistic and the statistics that were released in 2010, we can see that rates of marriage have fallen or risen. Okay, so you're not finding that data. I'm finding the data and you're using it. So it's secondary, it's second-hand usage. It's always quantitative data, and it allows you to observe trends and patterns, those kind of movements over time, rising and falling that you can see in society. What I would like you to do is I'd like you to pause this video and I would like you to define each of the words in red. Okay, and then I'm going to reveal the answers, and you can obviously unpause once you've finished and check your answers compared to what I've got written down. Okay, so pause it now for me. Okay, so here are the answers coming up. This is what you could have got for secondary research, quantitative data, and trends and patterns. If yours match that, then great, give it a tick, and if not, then just correct it for me there. Okay, so there are two types of statistics that we can look at. Okay, there is official statistics and non-official statistics. Now, official statistics are collected by the government. Okay, so by the UK government, and they are released by the government and groups that work for the government. Okay, the most common group is the Office for National Statistics, or the ONS. Okay, and they produce official statistics that cover a range of topics like births and deaths and marriage and divorce, unemployment and crime. Okay, so they are large scale. The census that happens every 10 years, happening again in 2021, is a form of official statistics. So it tells us large scale information about people living in the UK produced by the government. Okay, any statistic, such as the ones that we had at the start, any statistic which is not produced by the government is non-official statistics. Doesn't mean they're any less valid, they're just not official. Okay, so these are things like businesses or charities or you and I. If I did a poll of students in the class and how many of them didn't like Kit Kats, I would be producing non-official statistics. Okay, so anything that's not governmental is non-official, anything that's governmental is official, and that's the key difference between them. So an example of statistics which are official and produced by the government is divorce rates. Now, I'm not sure how clearly you can see the yellow line on here, but what this graph shows you is the blue line is the rates of divorce in the United Kingdom from 1950 to 2017. This is specifically between opposite sex couples. The yellow line shows the rate of marriages between the same couples and the same time, so 1950 to 2017. Now you can see very, very clearly from this graph that in the United Kingdom, or England and Wales specifically, the rates of divorce have risen since 1950 and the rates of marriage have fallen. Now we're going to move on after this to our topic of the sociology of families, and we'll look at the reasons behind this. But this graph is one which tells you, proves is a fact, that divorce rates have risen and marriage rates have fallen. Now, whenever somebody is born or dies, gets married or gets divorced, this information, the fact that they have been born or the fact that they have died or the fact that they've been married or got divorced, is recorded, and you get a certificate, a birth certificate or a marriage certificate or a certificate of death or a certificate of divorce. Okay, and this is recorded and it goes into data files collected by the government. And this information is then used by the government and by the Office for National Statistics to produce for us official statistics that show trends and patterns. So we can 100% trust these statistics that are produced on births, deaths, marriages and divorce. The amount of people that were born in the United Kingdom, we can trust that rate, because when somebody is born, it has to be recorded. When somebody is married, it has to be recorded. When someone gets divorced, it has to be recorded, and so on. And therefore, if you see statistics on births or deaths or marriages or divorces, you can trust them. They are valid because it is a matter of law that those rates and those statistics are recorded, and therefore when they're released, they're trustworthy. Okay, so things like divorce rates are a really, really trustworthy and helpful tool for sociologists to use, because there's kind of no way people can lie about that. You know, people don't lie about getting married. It's not possible. You have to legally show you are married. And therefore, they're very valid and very trustworthy pieces of data. However, there are other forms of official statistics, so still produced by the government, that are less trustworthy. Okay, one of the examples of that is crime rates. Now, there's a whole host of reasons, and I'm not saying at all that we can't trust crime rates whatsoever, but I'm just saying that we have to take them with a bit of a pinch of salt. Okay, so if you were to see this table here, what this table suggests is that the rates of crime in England and Wales are changing from October 16 to September 17. They're changing from that period to October 17, September 18. So it's sort of a year's difference. So the amounts of murders, or attempted murders, sorry, have fallen from 370 to 319. The amounts of assault with injury and assault with intent to cause serious harm have risen. The amount of rapes have risen, and the amount of sexual assaults have fallen. Okay, and you can see that this data suggests that certain crimes are on the rise and certain crimes are falling. Now, that might well be true. Yeah, I'm not suggesting that the amount of attempted murders is an incorrect figure necessarily. It might well be that that is a falling figure, and then it's up to sociologists to find out why it's falling. You know, why have there been less attempted murders than the previous year? But what I am saying is this: whereas births, deaths, marriages and divorces are recorded as a matter of law every single time someone is born, it's recorded. Every single time someone dies, it's recorded. Crime isn't the same. You see, we don't record every single crime that happens in the UK. Think about the amount of people that speed on the roads in the UK. Every time somebody speeds over the speed limit in the UK, they're committing a crime. But that's not recorded every single time. So the way that we record crimes in this country relies on people reporting being victims of crime. Okay, so that maybe involves people phoning the police and reporting a crime that's happened to them. Now, some people might not do that all the time. Maybe they might not feel like what happened is really worth bothering the police over. Maybe they might be too scared to call the police. Maybe they might not want to get the police involved for another reason. Either way, they're not going to report that crime. You looked at the study of Violent Night, the sociologists who went out into the city streets and asked men who had been victims of violence in nightclubs, and they didn't want to talk about the fact they were a victim because they felt some sense of shame as a victim of violence, as a male victim of violence. So there are certain reasons why people might not record being victims of crime. So if, let's say, for example, 400 people reported that they were a victim of violent assault, that might be the tip of the iceberg. There might actually be 800 people that were in fact victims, but only 400 reported it. It also relies on the police recording certain events as crimes. Now, for whatever reason, be it underfunded, overstretched, not enough time, differences of opinion, the police don't always record everything that's reported as a crime. Okay, so somebody might do something to me and I might feel that that's criminal. So I might call the police, and the police might then decide, actually, that's not a crime. We're not going to record that. So that then doesn't get put into official statistics and crime rates. Thirdly, there are actually surveys where people send out kind of anonymous surveys giving people a chance to confess to crimes. Now, it's not in a way of kind of getting them nicked and, you know, being able to prove someone's guilty because it's all anonymous, but they want to see just what's going on. Yeah, sociologists and you know, official groups want to see what's going on. Now, you can imagine if a letter came through your door asking you, please tick all of these things, have you committed these crimes in the last month? You might not be honest. Either you have committed them, you don't want to admit it, or you haven't committed them, but you think it's a bit of a laugh to say, yeah, I've you know, committed a bank robbery in the last 2 weeks. And people just aren't always honest. So crime rates, we can use them Of course we can use them, but we just can't trust the validity of crime statistics as much as we can birth, death, marriage or divorce ones. Okay, so birth, death, marriage and divorce are 100% valid. Crime rates are great, and it's, you know, largely accurate that there is a certain trend in rising and falling of crimes, but the individual figures within crime rates are not always exactly going to be what the actual figure is. Okay, it's kind of the tip of the iceberg of crime. And the final official statistic that we're going to look at today is unemployment rates. Now, unemployment rates, as it says in the tin, is rates of people who are without a job, okay, unemployed. Now, the government will often use unemployment rates if they are falling to prove that they, as the government in power, are doing a good job of getting people in the country into work. And you can see that this graph, which is released by the government, shows that unemployment rates have been falling quite a lot over the last few years. Now, this graph does not include rates from 2020. And we are going to see a rise in unemployment as a result of COVID-19 across the world. But these rates are at the moment falling. But again, a bit like crime rates, we can't trust them 100%. Now, again, I'm not saying they are untrustworthy. I'm just saying it's a pinch of salt, okay? The reason that unemployment rates are not exactly 100% as trustworthy or valid as birth, death, marriage and divorce rates is because these statistics can be manipulated. And what you'll find with statistics is that they can often be manipulated to look at better than they really are. So an example of this is that in the last few years, the government have introduced what's called 0 hours contracts. Now, these are basically contracts whereby a worker is contracted to doing 0 hours of work over the course of a week. And if they want to, the employer can then say, actually, this week you've got 10 hours or 11 hours or 12 hours. But if there isn't any work available, then the employer hasn't got to give that employee, that worker, any hours whatsoever. So technically they're not working because they're not doing any hours at work, but they are employed, and therefore they are taken off the unemployment statistic, which means it's one less person unemployed, one more person in work. They're not actually doing any hours necessarily, but they are in work. And so that kind of thing, changing what it means to be employed and changing what it means to be unemployed, can be a way that the government can get unemployment rates to fall and the graphs to look good. So when you hear, and you'll often hear politicians saying that we've had the lowest rates of unemployment in 20 years, yeah, that might well be the case. It might well be that there's more people in work than ever before, but also pinch of salt. Yeah, take it with a pinch of salt and think, actually, why is that? What are the reasons for that? Have they changed the boundaries to make it possible? So birth rates, death rates, marriage rates, divorce rates, you can 100% trust them. Okay, crime rates, unemployment rates, they are also official statistics, and they're so helpful for us as sociologists, but the data on its own is not 100% valid. We need to do a little bit of digging beneath the data to find out the real qualitative facts that then back up that data. Okay, so that's where we as sociologists come into our fore, is really asking those questions of why is this data here? So to summarize, we've got some tasks for you, and I'd like you to go through them. If you need to rewind and go back over stuff, you can do that. There's 8 tasks, and they are all relatively short. They're just kind of put into sort of subcategories. So number 1, full sentences, please. What type of data do statistics produce? Identify 1 positive and 1 negative of this type of data. Question 3, if you used statistics provided by the government or a charity in your own research, would you be conducting primary or secondary research? Explain why. Question 4, what is the difference between official and non-official statistics? Question 5, which official statistics can we trust the most, i.e. which are the sort of most valid without having to do any digging? Number 6, why are the following official statistics often criticised for being invalid or maybe less than 100% trustworthy? Crime rates, unemployment rates. Number 7, I'd like you to do some research on some official statistics. I wanted you to go to gov.uk and research the latest stats in the UK for marriages, births, deaths and unemployment. Okay, for each one, you're not going to go into too much detail, but for each one I just want you to write if it's rising or falling. Okay, so rates of marriages are rising or falling, rates of births have risen or fallen, etc, etc, etc. If you can, print off the table, but you haven't got to. And number 8, I would like you to research an unofficial statistic, okay, from a charity or a business group that tells you something about the COVID-19 situation. Okay, there's a lot of stats at the moment about how different ethnicities are suffering more than others as a result of COVID-19, or maybe how people who are poorer are more at risk than those who are wealthier. Okay, can you find a statistic that tells you some kind of fact about how the COVID-19 situation is affecting human beings or animals or the environment? Maybe find a stat from an airline charity or an airline business group and see how many airlines have, how the reduction in air travel is what I'm trying to say, how many less planes there are in the sky than before, that kind of thing. And I would like you to write that stat in your book. Okay, if you want to, there's some examples of charities there, or you could find your own. Okay, I hope this makes sense. If you have any questions, please let me know. As always, you can find me on email, and if you want to watch this video again, you're most welcome to. You poor things. All right, then, see you later. Bye-bye.